Ladies and gentlemen, in this Red Gaming Cetacom video we're going to be discussing yet again the subject of graphics on the next generation consoles. And to say shots have been fired is a bit of an understatement. In fact, it's more like the equivalent of every single nuclear device on the planet Earth going off simultaneously. And that has been going on for the past 48 hours now. We had a series of bombshells that was delivered just yesterday in regards to the ESRAM of the Xbox One. We now find out that there's titles on not just the Xbox One but the PlayStation 4 that are failing to hit the 1080p figure. Indeed, Battlefield 4 is running at 900p on the PlayStation 4, and of course Battlefield 4 on the Xbox One meanwhile is hitting 720p. There is some disagreement over which version looks better. It does appear that the Xbox One variant does look a little bit more vibrant in terms of colour. The colours look a little bit deeper, although some people are just saying that there's simply better filters in terms of higher contrast on the Xbox One version, but there's nothing you can do for the PlayStation 4. And also there's a little bit of controversy regarding the way that the various feeds have been captured. I have a feeling that much more on this is going to be coming out as we get much better versions of the feeds from our own homes. We've also had various developers that have been tweeting on this, and developers have been stating everything from the ESRAM is very bad to work with, all the way down to the fact that when compute comes out, it's going to make things even trickier. Now, Adrian Chmielarz, I probably pronounced that completely and utterly wrong, so I'm going to give you guys out the spelling. Chmielarz. I apologise, I suck pronouncing certain names, as regular viewers will know. No doubt I have a probably meme about me by now. And don't do one. Anyway, he is a former creative director of People Can Fly, and he's actually been taking to Twitter, as he tends to do. And he has said that, I quote, these are a series of tweets, so I'm not going to break it up, I'm just going to read them out as they come. The only reason we are impressed with next-gen visuals like Rise or Shadowfall is that no one makes such games as PC exclusives. By the way, out of quote for a second, I don't agree with all the stuff he says, and I'll get into that in just a moment. PC usually gets console ports but with higher resolution textures, and that's it. But if a studio really wanted to show off, the PC would dwarf next gens. All of the next gens always impressed, making PCs look inferior for a while, but not this time. This is a really weird launch. I mean, could you imagine the last gen struggling to achieve, and he puts this in quotation marks, 1024 by 768. I mean, 1080p is the standard on any decent PC, end quote. What are my thoughts on this? Well, at the risk of probably creating a shitstorm, I'm actually going to kind of agree with some points. First of all, I disagree with him saying that no one produces PC exclusives. Some PC games recently have looked incredible on the PC versus the console. However, I do take his point that most of the time it's because we only get better looking textures, but we are getting better lighting and so on as well. I'd also disagree that a lot of the future titles are PC ports from consoles. In actuality now, PCs are becoming the lead platform. Even the guys at Crytek have said that the reason behind this is because the PC is the more stable, more well-known platform. It's x86/64. It's easier to basically port code over to the next generation consoles. What I do agree with him in, and I'm sure many people will attest to this, is the fact that the next generation systems are fairly disappointing in what they're offering, in my personal opinion, right now. For example, Chris Cobb, who is the co-founder of a studio known as Ragtag Studio, he's been speaking in a recent interview, and he said, and this is in regards to a question on whether the PC will be rendering the PS4 and the Xbox One's GPU basically obsolete, and he asked, I suppose it depends on your definition of obsolete. With the lifespan of consoles approaching 10 years, there's no doubt within a few years PC GPUs will run past the PS4 ships, but they're proven with the PS3 that with more time developers spend with the system, they'll get more out of it. I'm sure that end of the life cycle games will not be able to compete with their PC counterparts, but they should be close enough for all but the strictest graphics snobs. Um, this is one of those questions where I'm being asked a lot by viewers my personal opinion. I am working on it, but I have to be really careful with how I phrase it, and there's so much contrary evidence right now. But here's the thing. I personally am buying a PlayStation 4 on launch. Now, the reason I'm buying a PlayStation 4 on launch is just simply because I like the look of Infamous. Admitted that's not a launch game, I like the look of Killzone, and I like a couple of other titles. However, most of my gaming, to be honest with you, is going to be done on PC. Um, and that's simply because I prefer not only the control layout on PC for most games, not all, but also because the graphics are just looking better. You've got a solid frame rate, I don't need to make compromises. Now, the argument, of course, is that PCs are more expensive. Yes, they are. But you can make a pretty comparable system, actually, on terms of console for like $500, $500 to $600. You can make a pretty damn good system. And you can actually play that, of course, on a TV, especially with live streaming and stuff. And in fact, that's what I do. Now, I don't want to turn this into a PC versus console debate, because I honestly do believe that both have their respective areas. But there is a growing murmuring from various forums, and you know what they are before I even go into them. But there's a growing murmuring that people are becoming less and less content. Now, obviously, I at the same time do agree that this generation has had some very interesting experiences. The ESRAM and the rather crappy development cycles of the Xbox One's SDKs, that's becoming pretty legendary right now. You've had certain games be delayed on both platforms, which isn't particularly new or exciting. And of course, this is first generation stuff. They're still getting used to it. This is particularly true for development studios who have been more used to developing on a traditional console platform. But I do think that we are going to be seeing a situation where, because they are so damn similar to PC, we're going to be seeing a runaway effect where the PC versions are definitely going to be the superior, as they generally have been. I do remember, and this has been something I've said for a while, the PlayStation 2 and the PS3, and you can throw in the respective consoles. So, for example, the Xbox on launch and I'd even say the Xbox 360 and even the PlayStation 1. They weren't necessarily better than the PC version. And by better, I mean in terms of raw, strict graphics. But what they were is better than the average PC on launch, right? So, for example, I remember I saw the original PlayStation, and it was, worse graphics on, say, a game like Wipeout, unless you had a really high-end Intel CPU and you had like a 3DFX graphics card and a few other bits and bobs, then you would have a better playing experience generally on the PC. But the 3DFX graphics cards didn't come out until really mainstream, until a little bit after the PlayStation. Same with, say, the Xbox 360. Obviously, we had high-end GPUs by then, but for titles like I was about to say Skyrim, Oblivion, Elder Scrolls Oblivion, it was pretty comparable on the Xbox 360 version. I actually had a pretty high-end gaming system then. It wasn't like the highest end, but it was pretty damn good. And also bought the game on the Xbox 360, and I preferred the 360 version in a couple of ways, but the loading times and stuff were pretty abysmal compared to the PC. But in terms of graphics, they were pretty comparable. Once, of course, you got like the better kit and you started to mod the games with ridiculously high-resolution textures and so on, then the gulf began to increase. But the difference is that they, apart from a couple of games, I believe Perfect Dark was 600p, I think it was, and there were a couple of other games that didn't have anti-aliasing. And so that's kind of par for the course, but it definitely seems to be more prevalent and more noticeable in this. I also think that there's a combination of the fact that people are becoming more aware of this stuff. The internet was big back then, but it wasn't quite so big as it is now. There are a lot more, of course, channels such as my own which help to highlight this stuff. There are people who are more aware of it, and I also think that there's an extension of this with the fact that Twitter and so on, people are following these studios, and not necessarily, and this is the key, it's not necessarily that people are not saying, you guys who are viewers, you probably do understand a lot of this stuff, but not necessarily the fact that people understand what they're reading, but they just realize that one number is bigger than another. And of course, in reality, 720p doesn't necessarily mean it will look better than 1080p, but it's kind of a mess. And I know this isn't exactly the topic of the video in this particular instance, but this is kind of running over. Over the next couple of days, I will be putting stuff out on this, but it's very difficult to keep up with it, honestly, because every time I'm about to say something on it, there's a huge thread exploding somewhere on the internet or something happens, and I have formed a couple of opinions, but I'm not willing to say them quite yet. They're probably going to come out this weekend for no other reason than I want to be pretty certain about what I'm going to say. I don't want to misinform people because that's not cool on anyone. So yeah, but I'm not going to say that this generation is necessarily disappointing me in terms of the games, but I would say that so far it has not impressed me in terms of raw graphics. I would say that the previous generation, like when I saw the Xbox 360, my mouth was actually open. Like when J.R. Allard was giving the speech and was giving the whole demo, I actually watched the whole thing. It was like an hour and a half or whatever. It was really difficult to get hold of because YouTube wasn't really a big thing back then, so I had to actually become like an IGN Prime member just to watch the bloody thing in high definition. And I went to war to watch this thing, yeah, and it was really good the way the presentation was done. He had a clear vision of gaming, and everything else just seemed to work. But there seems to be really quite a lot of ugly rumours, specifically around the Xbox One. I don't necessarily agree with all of them. I think some of them are somewhat made up. I think, however, there isn't smoke without fire, and I do definitely believe that some of them they have to be true. Not all of them can be false rumours or false speculation, because there is too much of it. In terms of the PlayStation 4, I don't necessarily think that Sony did anything that special with the hardware. I think that the compute stuff is really cool. I honestly do believe that. I think that it's pretty well known now that AMD actually used the basis compute for the next generation GPUs, for example, the R9 290X. They actually took a lot of the techniques they learned, so that's really cool. That did help gaming as a whole, in my personal opinion. But we'll have to see. I don't particularly think, however, that the system, Sony are boasting about 1.84 teraflops, and that's definitely a lot more, your mileage is a lot more than what you would get on, say, a PC. PC has a whole lot of other issues as well. As regular viewers will know, I know I'm kind of making this a bit longer than I should, but PC has a massive set of issues. We know, for example, that it has issues regarding the way that it deals with draw calls. Massive issue. Massive amounts of performance being basically pissed down the drain. There's other issues as well that I could go into, but they're pretty lengthy. But mostly these are API problems. So we'll have to see. But regardless, I'm kind of getting popcorn out a lot of the days because everyone is always kind of firing at the other studio. So I guess we're just going to have to see. I love the visions behind the next gens. I do. I really do love that. I love some of the games I'm seeing on both consoles. I really do. But in terms of graphics and in terms of the raw technology behind the consoles, I think that they're very innovative, especially the PlayStation 4, in terms of the compute use, but I don't necessarily agree that they're as powerful as possibly I expected. But then you've got things such as price and heat and other bits and bobs, so it's becoming a bit tricky and murky there to really start criticising. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed this video. I know it's been a kind of a ranty one, but regardless, I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye for now.